An 11.
She earned it.
She shot an arrow at your head.
Well, at an apple.
Near your head.
So it's us. We're here. Things new. Rangers.
Hello.
We haven't done it for ages.
Yeah, sorry, friends. We're here now.
Yep. We're here to bring you all the news that's new and approved. Or all the news we could scare up out of the IRC. So yeah, it's the 25th of August. We're using Mumble, which you should use for all your distance radio recording. It's fantastic. Get a Mumble server set up and do it that way, because it's just so much more stable than Skype.
It just really is.
Do you remember all the hassles we used to have with Skype?
I remember. It's terrible. Terrible.
Drop out every 10 minutes. My attic room where we recorded it all, it was so hot that the computers would crash.
Yep.
Because the roof would heat up and turn the thing into a furnace, and so we used to have like 3 or 4 computers all running at the same time just to record a single episode of Rangers Radio. Oh, it was a nightmare.
It was a nightmare.
All the sound card settings that would knock out the recording on Audacity. Oh, the joy of it! And now these podcasters today, they don't know they're born. They're USB microphones, and it all plugs in and just works. Your flashy operating systems.
Well, at least it does just work nowadays.
Your Linux that just installs off a USB stick. Oh, you think you're hot shit, didn't you? But I remember having to compile kernels in order, and then finding out there was no sound card drivers for that particular machine.
Yep.
Seriously, the idea of installing Linux on a laptop just didn't bear thinking about back in the day. No. When you didn't have separate drivers or identities on each individual part that Linux had to access. Oh, I remember when we used to use 8-bit computers. Back in day, could just
nobody had a thought about recording on 8-bit computers. No way.
No. Well, my first 8-bit computer didn't have fucking sound.
The
ZX81, no sound at all.
That's true. Didn't even have a speaker, did it? A beeper.
I spent the summer holidays trying to just get it to do something. Got a clip round the ear off my dad for saying, "Oh, that's not very impressive" at ZX81 when I first saw it. You don't know you're born. It was all valves when I were a kid. We used to have to chop it out in clear tablets in Sanskrit. Anyway.
Clay punch cards.
Clay punch cards. From Lancashire Clay.
Oh, gosh.
You'd go to a hotel and you'd have to chisel out your own door key from a lump of granite in reception. Like fucking Flintstones.
Oh my gosh.
Oh dear. Oh, it seriously is. I was reflecting earlier. There's a bit in Good Morning Vietnam where they have a religious broadcast. And this old guy comes on and goes, "Hello, hello, hello. This wonderful medium of radio really lets me talk to the men in the field. Father Noel, your source for ecclesiastical music, coming to you at 93.8 FM in Saigon." And it's just, that's how I feel. So this marvellous thing where I don't have to fuck around with the computer system for 2 hours just to get it to work.
Yep.
While someone's on Skype going, "Is it ready yet?" No, I can't get it to fucking start.
Oh, it's bad. It's good now, though. It's all working.
Yeah, some poor bastard's having to use that clunky old Behringer mixer out there because they nicked it off me. Fuckers. And good. It was impossible to use. It was an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
None of the sockets worked. I think most of the switches were missing and been broken off at some point. Anyway, we've got news and everything. So over to you.
Yeah. So first up, Biohackers encoded malware in strand of DNA. This one's thanks to Iron Angel and Kevin. When biologists synthesize DNA, they take pains not to create or spread a dangerous stretch of genetic code that could be used to create a toxin or worse, an infectious disease. But one group of biohackers demonstrated how DNA can carry a less expected threat, one designed not infect not humans nor animals but computers. In research they plan to present at Usenet Security Conference on Thursday, a group of researchers from University of Washington has shown for the first time that it's possible to encode malicious software into physical strands of DNA, so that when a gene sequencer analyzes it, the resulting data becomes a program that corrupts gene sequencing software and takes control of the underlying computer. While that attack is far from practical for any real spy or criminal, it's one that researchers argue could become more likely over time as DNA sequencing becomes more commonplace, powerful, and performed by third-party services on sensitive computer systems. And perhaps more to the point for the cybersecurity community, it also represents an impressive sci-fi feat of sheer hacker ingenuity. We know that if, quote, we know that if an advisory has control over the data a computer is processing, it can potentially take over that computer, says Tadayoshi Kono, the University of Washington computer science professor who led the project, comparing the technique to traditional hacker attacks, that package malicious code into web pages and an email attachment. That means that when you're looking at the security of computational biology systems, you're not only thinking about the network connectivity in the USB drive and the user at the keyboard, but also information stored in their DNA. It's about considering different class of threat.
I mean, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder if if you do get DNA scans at airports, whether people would have it would if you did have that in your DNA. That if your DNA gets read by a computer, then the computer is then hacked. It'd be pretty inconvenient for you.
It'd be very inconvenient.
You'd be like a digital leper. You wouldn't be allowed to touch other people's computer systems.
Well, that's the thing, though. I mean, if it's something that gets encoded, and that's the other thing, the interesting thing as well. If it's something that gets encoded into DNA, it's there. You can't really use it anymore.
If it's in your DNA, it replicates throughout your entire cell structure. Every cell in your body will eventually carry that new piece of DNA. So it's sort of like, you could infect yourself to hack computers, but then you would become persona non grata digitally. Everything you touch that read your DNA. And I think it's got to be sort of like the sort of DNA sequencing that just sort of puts the malware into the general use memory of the computer. It's then got to get outside of that individual process to then take over some of the computer systems. But it always worries me that eventually you'll have to submit DNA to do anything.
Yeah.
As a your DNA record will be everywhere. Which is a bit like having your computer password everywhere.
It is a little bit.
I mean, if somebody knows your DNA sequence, they could probably target you or anybody with enough genetic similarities to you with disease or a specific virus and stuff like that. So you could theoretically infect every sort of left-handed redhead.
The interesting thing about that is that that assumes that you were just using DNA as a security marker. I mean, look at how you'd have to put some sort of multiple factor on it. So, for instance, when you use you've got a cash card that's got contactless payments on it. Yeah. It doesn't send your PIN with the payment. It does like a one-time authentication. And that's what you'd need. It'd need to be, if you're going to use anything that's part of yourself, it would need to be a one-time non-reversible authentication. So there would have to be something in it that says, right, okay, this is the DNA. It takes a DNA sequence and then it does a one-time encryption on it and then sends it off to wherever it needs to confirm it, and that it doesn't get anything back except yes or no. It doesn't get the sequence back. The sequence goes there, it's authenticated, and then it's deleted. Yeah, that's what you would need. It would need to be treated like at least like the sort of thing we have now with credit cards, with contactless cards. Or any sort of like 1 or 2 factor authentication that you use to like connect up through a business VPN.
Yeah, it's all a bit Revelations though.
It is.
And a man shall have a mark on his right hand or his forehead, and without that mark shall not be able to buy or sell.
I don't know if this is ever a thing that would ever be, maybe not in our lifetime, because the amount of infrastructure that would be required to do that sort of
computer storage would have to be massive, and data transmission speeds would have to be incredibly high.
Not only that, you'd have to have your entire DNA sequenced
Yeah.
for anything.
Which right now is well expensive, but
And it would have to be every single company would have to have their own database.
Mm.
I think this is incredible that these scientists have been able to put a piece of malware into DNA or a piece of code into DNA. That's incredible, and that says a lot for what's going to happen in the future science-wise. But what it means is that it's not. This is like way off in the future. I'll be surprised if there's anything like this happens within the next 40, 50, 60 years.
But there again, I remember when a megabyte was a big chunk of memory.
Mm.
I remember when a kilobyte was a perfectly okay amount of RAM for a computer to have.
But even then, I think what's going to happen, right? This is another reason why this isn't going to happen anytime soon. Companies don't like spending money.
Hmm.
So we've had the technology for contactless for decades.
Yeah, but they like chip and pin because if there's fraud, it's your fault.
That's why in chip and pin we've had that technology for decades, but it comes out only when the technology is cheap enough that companies can go, okay, we can spend the money now.
And I think that if you had DNA and it's something fraudulent happened with your bank account, then the onus would be on the banks and their database.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a kind of a tricky thing. You know, you've got to look at where the banks would prefer the risk to be.
Yeah.
And a bank always wants you to be the person that takes the risk rather than them. So
exactly.
If it was, you know, absolutely foolproof, you know, fraud proof, you know, then, and you know, I think banks know that if you say this is unassailable levels of security, sooner or later someone will get round it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the onus will be on the bank because they've told you it's completely fraud proof.
Yeah.
So it's more the human response of wealthy people to this technology.
Well, essentially what it is that this is incredible and interesting and kind of scary, but capitalism will prevent this from being a thing for a good long time. Yeah,
until it's so cheap that it just makes no sense not to.
Yeah. Well, you might find actually what's going to happen first, I reckon, is you'll have wetware first of all, like that guy who has that chip implanted in his arm. So
there was a story recently about a company that wants all its employees to have one, so they don't have to issue entry cards.
Yeah.
So you get chipped by your corporation.
Which is kind of scary.
Return me to the Toshiba Corporation, or you know, the Volvo Corporation, or BMW. You're just like, I'm not sure I want that.
Me either.
Yeah.
Also, I would say that's a massive security risk.
Well, it's also a bit of a physical risk for anybody that wants to break into those buildings.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got a chip in your hand and there's anything sufficiently valuable that you have access to in that building, and the only ID that the system reads is your chip, somebody's going to chop your fucking hand off sooner or later to get in there.
Yep.
You know, and also it's sort of like, you know, it's very close to being treated as property by a company.
Mm-hmm.
So I can imagine an awful lot of people from oppressed groups will, and we're just going to put this chip in your neck. Excuse me?
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, I know. I mean, I'm personally in this really weird, I mean, talking about contracts and company ownerships, I don't actually have a contract to work where I'm working.
Oh, no.
They've just forgotten to give me one. And given that, you know, they seem to be paying me holiday pay and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they seem to be paying me on time and all that sort of thing.
You must have one.
I haven't signed anything. I filled in an application form.
You got your workplace pension?
Yeah.
Wow, that's okay. That's interesting then. You haven't signed a contract, and they've given you all the benefits of it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Weird, isn't it?
Oh, it is weird. You're paying your tax and everything, yeah?
Oh, yeah. It's all going through. I've seen the pay slips. They're getting pay slips and all that sort of shit.
Wow, that's kind of weird.
But they've completely dropped the ball because they're not terrifically organised. And I don't know how long to keep it up. I mean, it's not the sort of job I want to do for the rest of my life. But it does give me the flexibility to just not go again if I don't want to.
Yeah.
So I can give them like an hour's notice.
And just do one.
Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant.
How messed up is that? Yeah, but yeah, it's that sort of whole, all these weird little things that sort of like that it's an interesting story, and I think it's one of those we've managed to do it. That doesn't mean to say it will be done, but the technology is now there. I think that given that the DNA scanning technology doesn't really exist in any meaningful way. It exists in the sense of universities have got the ability to take someone's DNA, compare it to someone else's DNA, and then prove identity one way or the other. And laboratories have got it. And now they've got this digital thing where you can encode DNA into a strand of DNA if you're a university lab, and then get it to deploy a virus into a computer system.
This is more going to be of interest to people doing cybersecurity.
Yeah.
And people doing anyone's doing cybersecurity and also doing DNA sequencing. This is the sort of thing that's going to be this for the majority of people. This isn't something that's ever going to happen in your lifetime.
No, but the interesting thing is they're almost saying this technology doesn't really exist in a meaningful way, and we've already hacked it.
Yeah.
So you can't say it's foolproof. So they've done the world a service, really. So at least they've broken it before.
Well,
it's
actually,
widespread
that's
technology.
Point, that's another point, actually. That's a good point, actually. Because they've already done this, it's less likely that they're ever going to do anything like this.
Yeah, so they've done the world a service a bit. So they've sort of said, oh yes, before you start rolling this out or thinking about rolling this out 30 years from now, with technology from now, we can already fuck it up. Well, just to let you know, it's already beatable.
I think it's less likely that we're ever going to have like sort of DNA sequencing like this, right? But
less likely now.
Yeah, even less likely now. But what we're going to have is, considering that nowadays you can pay for stuff using your phone because they've all got NFC in them, and the card readers now have got NFC in them as well. That you've got that. I think it's more. This is more leading towards a cyberpunk future where we're going to have where wetware is going to be very common. And wetware that you buy, like a phone. You buy a piece of wetware, and it's an implant that you've got your payment details on it and things like that. But you'd have to have it somewhere where you can't just have your hand cut off.
That's the thing. It's sort of like, what body part can't you have cut off in order to? I think that's why I think, say, retina scans on phones are probably a lot more effective. Than, say, a DNA reader. Because the only thing you're going to be able to read DNA off is like a fingertip or something where you're holding the phone.
Well, even now that I think about it...
Or a chip that's twinned with your phone that says this person is now holding this phone.
Now that I think about it, it's less likely that would even happen anyway, because what do people do nowadays? They have scanners that just scan the contents of your wallet and get the details from there. So that's the thing that your security guys are going to have to think about. If you have wetware, it's got to be impervious to people scanning it.
So one of the things I'm really tempted to do is get one of those magnetic barcode printers that prints the ID badges.
Yeah.
The badges that have got like magnetic information and so
you've got the mag strips on them.
Yeah, so you can open doors and stuff like that, the little sort of like RFID ones.
Which one though? Because you've got the ones that do mag strips and the one that do RFID.
Yeah, you can get ones that print RFID cards. And the information on the RFID, use an RFID writer that's in the printer to write a certain code.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of wondering whether I couldn't, if I got one of these printers, just run myself off another door pass for work.
If you can read what's on the one that you've got currently, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure that if I did that and then programmed the RFID number that it transmits to open the door to the next number along in the sequence, I bet I could open the door and change my identity as far as the site computer system was concerned. The temptation then is to go to the people who run the security at the train station and then go, I can open this, right? This is not secure.
Yeah.
I bought this printer off eBay for 300 quid. I checked out the card thing from your RFID thing, and I put the number 1 along, and I opened this door.
Yeah.
But I know that they would completely lose their frigging minds and try and arrest me. But yeah, it's, you know, that sort of, you know, making things so that you don't have to remember a code, or making things so that you're trying to take the human quotient out of any security measure.
Yeah.
I think you're always onto a hiding to nothing with that, because there's always a cheap way around it.
180 quid.
Yeah.
Card print, double-sided card printer with mag stripe and RFID capabilities.
I mean, if you've got an Arduino, you can get an RFID reader writer for the Arduino for about 3 quid, and you can write yourself an RFID card.
Mm-hmm.
But those printers that will print out the little ID cards are cheap as dirt now.
Oh yeah.
I always thought there'd be a market at conventions to do Starfleet security cards and shit like that. You know, Weyland-Yutani business cards and things like that, with your photo on and shit like that for your wallet.
Yeah.
For funny companies. I bet you can make an absolute friggin' fortune.
Oh, I bet.
But people would sue you into the ground, so, you know. Anyway, moving on, because we should. So this is a weird and interesting story. US diplomats in Cuba mysteriously go deaf as country is accused of using secret sonic weapon. The mysterious hearing loss has been going on for over a year. So, freshly friendly relationships between the USA and Cuba appears to have soured after officials that have been said they have been secretly made deaf. The hearing loss has been blamed on a secret sonic weapon and is just one of a series of bizarre incidents that have upset US officials working in Cuba. The US has kicked out 2 Cuban diplomats in an attempt to address the strange incidents. And essentially, where the diplomats' housing is, loads of people have gone deaf. You know, over like a period of a year. Which is, it does sound like something that the East German police would have done.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that drop in level of technology, that weirdness. Why would you want a diplomat to be deaf?
Right? That's just weird.
Apparently the US government has not said that or confirmed that they suffered hearing loss, only that they had a variety of physical symptoms. It's just really weird. Like, the one person you want from your foreign devil enemy to be able to hear you is their diplomat. So just so you can say "get fucked" to them, you know, when they demand something. Yeah. Apparently they launched, the Cuban Foreign Ministry launched an exhaustive, high-priority, urgent investigation at the behest of the highest level of Cuban government. And it's just really weird. What a weird thing to want to do.
It is super weird.
Cuba employs a state security apparatus that keeps many people under surveillance, and US diplomats are among the most closely monitored people on the island. Like virtually all foreign diplomats in Cuba, the victims of the incidents lived in housing owned and maintained by the Cuban government. But yeah, how weird is that?
It's super weird.
I mean, obviously, even if they were doing it, the Cubans have said no, they're not doing it. But I just don't understand why you would. Oh, you know, the purpose of surveillance is to sort of know what they're going to do, but you know, you don't want to have to. You want to learn the habits of those diplomats so you can predict how they're going to be as people. You don't want them to leave the country and then them send new diplomats every 6 months, because it just seems really weird. But yeah, I thought that was really strange. They accuse them of a sonic weapon being somewhere in the maintained housing that over time destroys their hearing.
It's really weird, that is. I mean, I don't even... It sounds really, really far-fetched, that does. I mean, it's kind of far-fetched because, like, it's not what people do nowadays. I mean, like, we've seen that it's come out in, like, the recent couple of days that Russia is, like, trying to... has been influencing politics in the West quite a lot. So this seems really weird to me that it's like it's not Cuba trying to do something similar.
I can understand them trying to. I don't even know why. I mean, why would you do something with a nation? Why would you annoy a nation that you're trying to restore trade links with?
Yeah.
You know, it's just really strange.
It really is. It's super strange. I mean, yeah, I don't get it. I honestly don't get it.
I don't know of a sonic device that would fuck up your hearing over time.
Me either.
I'm not sure how you would do that. I mean, you can deafen someone with a very loud noise, but I'm not sure there's a sound that you could hear repetitively that would make you go deaf.
Well, there are frequencies that people can't hear as they get older.
Yeah.
And I've experienced this. I was watching a video recently that was sort of like talking about frequencies. It's like, okay, can you hear this noise? If you can't hear that noise, then you're old. Then you're too old to be able to hear it because you've lost that range. And it was just like it shocked me.
Well, there was talk of using that device called a Mosquito to stop teenagers loitering around outside shops.
Yeah.
There is a specific frequency that only affects like people up to the age of about 17. And you know, it's uncomfortable to be around, but nobody over than about 20 can even hear it.
It's just I don't know. Yeah. This is just like one of those weird things where it's like I'm too old to even understand it, purely because it's something that came in after I turned 20.
Weirdness. Anyway, next story's over to you. The next and final story for this week's thingy.
Only got 3 this week. Let's scroll up.
Kevin did send me another 2 stories, and I don't know where they've gone, and I don't know if they're to the 2 stories that we've just read. But it was in a conversation with Iron Angel and Kevin, and I didn't write it down at the time, and now I can't remember. So apologies to both of you.
Yep. Just give me 1 second, because I think this is missing the. I think this is missing. There we go. It is. It's missing the headline.
All right.
Massive dune threatens West Michigan home, but state orders family to stop moving sand. Silver Lake, Michigan. Despite 20 summers of scooping back sand, the Dresley family has never seen their lakeside home this close to doom. A towering, creeping sand mountain that swallowed several cottages in the 1960s casts a menacing shadow over the house on this West Michigan lake, about an hour's drive north of Great Rapids. Last winter, it destroyed the cottage the family owned next door. As eastward winds from Lake Michigan push the dune further into the neighborhood, a growing beach spreads through the yards of more than a dozen nearby cottages, each of which could be threatened if the wind continues in this direction. Now, the state of Michigan has ordered the Dreslers to stop their latest effort to save the remaining summer home from destruction. The sand is protected as a critical dune area, so trucking it away is forbidden. They're killing us, said Dresler 58. I'm so pissed off right now and beyond words. Silver Lake State Park attracts 850,000 visitors annually, with 1,600 acres of magnificent sand dunes near Lake Michigan. It's the only place in the state where you can ride off-road vehicles over dunes. But living next to the dunes means the threat of a natural hazard. Here, an unfortunate wind pattern is all it takes to destroy a subdivision. Oceana County Commissioner Larry Bill owns property on the nearby shore of Lake Michigan, and said he's well aware of the invading water could ruin his cabin. The Dreslers face a similar reality with sand, but Bill says that they should still have the right to protect their property. He quote, I find it ironic that the state seeks to protect all of the dunes and not let a property owner protect their structure, but on the other hand, the state feels it's fine to have dune buggies and quadrunners all over the dunes. Dresler always knew about the sand's potential. He grew up visiting Silver Lake, and he recalls seeing nearby abandoned homes ready to be buried in the early 1970s. My dad always used to say, well, most people have to mow their lawn, but we have to move a little bit of sand, so it kind of works out the same. In the beginning, we really didn't have much to move at all. Roughly 10 years ago, Dresler said you could look out from the home's small lighthouse tower and see Lake Michigan a mile west. Today, it's a wall of sand the family estimates to be between 80 and 150 feet high.
Yeah, it's mad. It's like you've got a dune basically marching across and taking out your house.
Yeah, there's
What's
pictures on
extra
this
interesting
news article.
is Iron Angel knows some of the people that were in one of the houses that was recently swallowed a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they had to abandon everything that was in there. It just became too hazardous to even visit. And he said a couple of his sculptures are buried under the sand there.
Oh, wow. I got 3 questions, really, with this. Or maybe just one. But that is why. Why on earth have we got... Why on earth did they... Why have we still got people... Why are people still living there? Why did they even build houses there? I mean, okay, maybe they didn't know it was going to be this bad back then when they built houses. When they built the houses there. But if it is like it is now...
Well, do you know when people started studying dunes?
When was that?
In the 1960s.
Ah, okay.
So those houses were probably built long before anybody could say, oh, we've just had a look at the map of the winds and the way the dunes are moving, and it looks like your houses are in the path of that dune. So in 20 years' time, you may find the house gets swallowed up. So it's kind of like people really didn't know how they moved. One of the first people to actually do studies on that was, in fact, Frank Herbert.
Oh, wow.
Who wrote Dune.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, you know, the idea that dunes move in a very similar way to water. You know, if as they're pushed, but you basically get waves of sand that are formed through regular passage of wind. They're very, very strange. They have weird collapse points and stuff like that. That's why they're quite dangerous. That's why, you know, they're saying don't, you know, one of the reasons that the local authorities have said please don't sort of take a backhoe to this dune and try and take it down, because there will be currents in the sand. There'll be undertow and currents within the sand just moving very, very slowly, and different densities. So some guy's going to just take out the wrong shovelful with a black backhoe and get fucking killed by 20,000 tons of sand.
My follow-up question is, why is the state not just fucking moving them? I mean, okay, I don't know if it says it in anything in this.
Well, these are beach houses.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not permanent residences. These are holiday homes.
Yeah.
So, you know, they were built, they're light structures. You know, and they, you know, families are being moved out of the way as where they live becomes too dangerous for them to live in.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like people building houses on floodplains and water meadows and things, or in areas where tidal waters change over decades. I mean, you know, you've even got examples of that in Leeds, you know, all those new builds along the river.
You know what?
And although every winter 1 or 2 of those blocks gets flooded completely.
You know what? Fuck these people. Actually, I just realised this. I just read on further. Fuck these people. Fuck these guys. Because, right, I must have misread or not understood the bit you've just said about being in a holiday home. Yeah. If they can afford a fucking holiday home, and I just read on further, they spend as much as $20,000 over the many years to move the sand. Fuck them. If this is a holiday home, fuck them. If they can afford more than one house, fuck them. People in this country and in America can't afford their own fucking houses because people like them are driving up the prices. Fuck them.
I'm going to make you even more angry. You misread that as well. It's $200,000.
I'm doing that thing where I shake my arms around. I'm not angry. I'm angry now. Oh my gosh. Fuck these people with their fucking... I've got some advice for the Dreslers, right? I've got some advice for the Dreslers. Dreslers, if you're listening, fuck you. Sell your house. Fucking go somewhere else. This is not a thing I fucking care about. This is not a thing anyone should fucking care about. God and fucking bet it. Oh my gosh.
It might be most politely described as a first world problem.
This is a first world problem of the highest fucking order. Oh my gosh. When people complain about people having first world problems because they can't get a fucking something to eat from a place because it's run out, no, that's not a first world problem. This is a fucking first world problem. If you've got so much money that you can afford to spend $200,000 to move sand instead of just fucking moving out,
I'm going to make your
taking
head
the
go
hits.
bang. If you go down 2 paragraphs, volunteers, neighbours, and an online fundraiser help support their effort to liberate.
Oh my gosh! Oh my
dear.
gosh. Oh my gosh, this is in America where people have to do GoFundMe's to get healthcare.
How much did they get off GoFundMe?
I don't even want to know.
Oh, it doesn't say. Oh.
Oh my god, I don't even know. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I think the thing is in blue there because it links to the online fundraiser. I'm gonna have to find this now.
Oh wow.
It does link to it.
Graafen is now furious.
They've got $8,000 raised by 30 people in 2 months out of a $28,000 goal. There are people in this. America's got a shit healthcare system, and people in America have to have GoFundMes to pay for their healthcare.
Yeah.
Because something happens and they can't afford it and their insurance doesn't cover it. And they're trying to... And Trump, that fucking bastard Trump, is trying to take away the one good thing about the healthcare, about the Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act is not perfect, but it's so much better than it was before. Trump's trying to take it away. And these people have a fucking GoFundMe to pay to get their fucking sand moved. Oh my fucking gosh. Dreslers, sell your fucking house. Shove it up your fucking ass. God, do not give all those people that money back. Shove that house up your fucking ass.
That's commie
Sell
talk.
that house.
That's commie
Sell
talk,
that
and you know
house.
it.
Fuck off. I don't care. I don't give a shit. I'll be a communist if I have to.
Oh wow. Yeah,
oh my
it's
God.
It's sort of like, £200,000 on your holiday home.
Oh my gosh! I just
this very much reminds me, and the most real it can be, and this is how I know I've got a sense of humour about life, is when I was living in my teepee and I was on the dole. So my entire income over a month was £278. No, it was 278. What was it? Yeah, £278 I was getting every month as job seekers allowance, because I couldn't get I couldn't get my rent paid for because I was living in a tent. But 200 of that was my rent, so I was living on £78 a month, which is pretty impressive, considering I smoke. So food and tobacco and cat food, basically, and any gas that I was spending, basically, and my electricity bill every quarter. So I was living on that kind of money, like really destitute, but having quite a nice lifestyle. And a friend of mine came over and just cheerily told me that he'd just spent £1,500 on a lunch with Richard Branson.
Wow.
And I'm sitting there, and he's telling me this while we're sitting in my teepee, waiting for the kettle to boil.
And
I said, "You're damn lucky that I've got a sense of humour." Because you just blew 6 months of my income on a meal. Like one meal. And you're telling me about it. In a kind of isn't this funny kind of a way.
Oh my gosh.
But that was pretty funny. But yeah, this is like that, when somebody's got, spent £200,000 on trying to stop a sand dune from moving. But it is weird that they're not allowed to move this sand dune, though. But if you're in a dune buggy, you could drive all over it and fuck it up generally.
Yeah, that's kind of...
But then the US National Park Service isn't known for its sense of, proportion.
Sense of humour, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd have sympathy for these people if it was their home. If it was their home.
Oh, it really is.
Their one home, the house. and they would be losing money to sell it. Because who's going to buy a house that's going to get destroyed in the next?
Oh, the house is kind of worthless. But if they've spent more than £200,000 on the house to start with, which I doubt if they bought it in the '60s, I've seen pictures of it. It's like a 2-bedroom beach hut.
Yeah,
it's not very big at all. It's like a little shotgun shack, and it's sort of like, no, why? It's like the idea that they're sort of going, well, we'll fight Mother Nature. It's sort of like, well, really, it's never going to stop.
No.
The second you don't start digging it out, it's going to come and claim the house. It's right up next to the house now. So if the sand dune gets to a critical level, it will just engulf the house, which is why Forestry Service are a bit iffy about people trying to dig into the side of it. I mean, there are things you can do. You can stabilise dunes with plant growth, but they'd have to introduce non-native species to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a weird story. But yeah. But it is a bit of a first world problem when that kind of money's involved.
It is really, really. Oh my gosh.
I really enjoyed you freaking out.
Oh.
Because you know, I get that angry about stuff like all the time, and I just think, is it me? What everybody else seems very peaceable and not angry about the things that are going on in the world. But it's nice to know other people do get angry as well.
It's good that you point that out to me because I completely misread part of it.
Yeah.
I thought that was their actual house, and if it summer home, fuck off.
And you've known for the best, well over, you know, in the area they've known for well over 70 years that sand will eventually come and take the houses out.
Yeah.
And now that time has arrived, and they're, you know, I mean, you know, when you pay for something on GoFundMe, like you were mentioning, like a medical operation that somebody really needs, generally speaking, once you've raised that money, that problem in that person's life is fixed.
Yeah.
But in this instance, even if you were sort of like, you know, a very eccentric philanthropist, and you sort of said, oh, they need like, you know, $100,000, I'll just give that to them.
Yeah.
That problem is coming back again in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. Exactly.
So it's a completely Sisyphean task. I mean, you've really got to say, right, okay, let's not live here. Let's move. America's a big place. We can go and live somewhere else where there isn't a sand dune trying to eat our house. Our holiday home. You know. I mean, the structure's small enough that you think, you know what, you could probably, you know, either it would be cheaper to just move, you know, buy another plot of land at the other end of the lake if you really still wanted to live there, and just
move the house
and put up a small house there. Or a trailer.
You could probably get the house moved.
The house, yeah, you could probably lift. It's probably not on, you know, amazingly sturdy foundations anyway. You should probably put the whole thing on a flatbed. Anyway, so that wraps up the news portion of our show. We're going to come back in a few minutes. We're going to play some sort of random music, which I haven't really picked out yet because I'm assembling this after time. So I'm going to stop the recording, and we're going to come back in a few minutes.
Sit with me.
Okay.
Okay, so we're back. It's discussion time.
Oh yeah, discussion time.
And Captain Kirk is in the news yet again.
Yep.
So what's he been
Oh my
saying?
gosh.
What's he been saying on Twitter?
So, William Shatner has been tweeting like a bastard, going off against so-called SJWs, and saying that there's one quote here. If I can find the actual one. Why is it that SJWs think they can align themselves with those that demanded social reform in the 60s? And it just shows how out of touch he actually is with modern politics. The thing is, though, is that the problem is that on the surface of it, this might not look anything major, but when you read through his tweets, he is spouting a lot of rhetoric that is pushed by Reddit and 4chan. And it's a sort of rhetoric that they've been pushing that's led to the alt-right. And for people like myself who keep an eye on these things, when you start seeing that sort of rhetoric being pushed, it is like a hair's so close to becoming alt-right. I've seen it happen so many times. I mean, it's interesting because he wasn't like that. He didn't used to be like this, but he's probably gotten bored, right? He's retired. He's not doing anything anymore. You know, he's not acting in anything. He's probably gotten bored, like Notch, and started browsing around on the internet, and a lot of it points back to Reddit. And I mean, even in 2013, he said that Reddit was a, quote, immature, horrifically racist, sexist, homophobic, etc., ethnic, etc. on Reddit. That it was a massive cesspit. And 4 years later, he's like totally okay with it.
I'm just trying to see if I can find some of the tweets.
Hang on, let me. There's a Salon article that has them in there. I've just linked you.
Okay, let me have a look at some of these.
He says that SJWs stand for inequality. It's just like, oh my gosh, he's got no idea.
Let's have a look.
He says that SJWs would rather have things in their favour and not equal. Quote from this article: Shatner's parroting of anti-SJW rhetoric regularly seen on those sites, Reddit and 4chan, complete with the alt-right nomenclature about snowflakes and misandrists, is a dead giveaway that he's fallen victim to the very trend he prophesized. Other writers have documented the gradual seepage of 4chan's rhetoric into the actor's political statements, and he was noticeably absent from a letter signed by many of his original Star Trek series colleagues and their families denouncing Trump as un-Trekkian. It's all very the abyss gazing into thee. As for the seeming betrayal of his own 1960s era politics, Shatner deserves credit for fighting for that interracial kiss between himself and Star Trek co-star Nichelle Nichols in the 1968 episodes Plato's Stepchildren. While that creative decision made him unremarkable in 2015, it was bold enough that, as Star Trek co-star George Takei recalled in 2015, the episode was blacked out in the South.
Yeah, but also, well, that's a funny phrase to use. But,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think the problem with Twitter is, in an idle moment, you can make a statement. without really thinking it through.
Yeah,
I think
the problem.
If I think there would be a useful app would be a sort of like a Twitter barrier. So you tweet something and then it would wait 24 hours, come back to you and said, have you thought about this and do you still want to tweet it? Especially in the case of Donald Trump. I'm amazed the CIA haven't disabled, or the FBI haven't just disabled Donald Trump's Twitter account.
They've tried, and he just kicks off. The thing about that is...
I'm sorry, sir, but you're a moron and we can't have you tweeting. You're making the whole country look bad.
The thing is, everyone makes mistakes on Twitter. Everyone tweets something they didn't really think about.
I mean, the one where he says, who are you to align yourselves with civil rights movements type thing.
Yeah.
I think, if you're sort of like saying, if I think that's probably not in response to everybody should be treated equally. It's probably more in response to somebody picking a thing that seems inconsequential to him compared to black people being beaten in the streets for no reason. On some of the civil rights marches in the 1960s, William Shatner is there with Nichelle Nichols, George Takei, and Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah.
He's like there in front of police with guns saying, this shit's got to change.
Yeah.
And we were talking about it earlier and I said, is it possible for someone to do something so laudable that an offhand comment can be forgiven?
Well, this is more than just an offhand comment, though. I mean, this is a proper meltdown on his part, like I just had. I have seen people, and I've done it myself, and who have said things on Twitter that you later realise that you didn't think through, and you apologise. But you go back and you apologise for it. You put out a tweet saying, I apologise, I'm sorry I said this, hadn't thought it through, and I apologise. You don't say things like, I'm sorry if I offended you. Because that's not the right way of saying it. You just say, I am sorry for what I did. You don't put the onus of apologising onto other people, which is what you do if you say, I'm sorry if I offended you. You just say, you're sorry. Shatner hasn't done that. Shatner has doubled down. And it's that doubling down, which is really... Because it started off, he said that, and people were like questioning him, why are you saying this? That's not really that good. And he's just doubling down on everything. He is right in his mind. And no matter what people are bringing to him, he's not changing it. He's not listening to what other people are bringing to him. He's already set up in his mind. But as you say, can someone do something so laudable in the past that it changes what they do in the future? And does it affect it? And I'd say no. I don't think anyone can do anything that exonerates them from anything they do in the future. Especially, you can do great things and then just turn around and say one thing entirely, and that doesn't mean that what you've done in the past does not mean that right now you are no longer a nice person. We can easily say that Shatner's a jerk now, but he was doing great things in the 60s, so we can still look back at this work he did then and say it was pretty good. Say, well, at least he was a good person then. We can look back at that and say, wistfully, I wish for the time when Shatner was a good person.
Okay, I mean, but you could also say that, racism is an evil.
Yeah.
And having a pop at SJWs is being a bit of a dick. So, in that this is someone that actively combated evil, like literally put his well-being in the way of baton rounds and horse charges and being clubbed to bits by American police. In basically in the middle of a parade to demand equal rights for people of colour. Yeah, that's a good thing. That's combating evil.
That is a good thing.
And now tweeting something that people disagree with is,
I don't like using that term. Disagree in this case.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's spouting some sort of like very sort of Reddit 4chan rhetoric.
The thing is that you've always got to be looking at what people are doing now. He did, like I say, this is what I said, he did great things in the past, and standing up in those rights has been fantastic. And he should be commended for that. But people change. People are fluid. People aren't you know.
And he's got a bit older, but I mean, you also look at other sort of famous people that have sort of said stuff on Twitter that has really offended sort of people on the, shall we say, activist left.
Mm-hmm.
For want of a better term, I don't really. SJWs is too broad a category.
Well, SJW is just a
pejorative now.
Pejorative, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, it always was a pejorative.
Yeah, but we were talking about that earlier. It's like do-gooder.
Yeah,
like,
it's like
demanding social justice
goody
is not something that you should be condemned for.
No.
And doing good is not something that you should be condemned for. But it's it's an interesting twist. You should be as evil and curmudgeonly as the rest of us. Otherwise, you're a fruit loop.
I think the thing is, I think the thing that's more telling is it's less that people are upset at what he said, and more upset that it's him who said it. A lot of people, certainly what I've seen, it's been like, but you're William Shatner. How can you say these things? This isn't you.
But Stephen
Why
Fry
are you
did
saying these things?
the same thing pretty much recently.
Stephen Fry did the same thing. That's why I stopped following Stephen Fry on Twitter, even though Stephen Fry still follows me. I don't understand why, but I stopped following Stephen Fry because of that. And it's sort of like, if I'm gonna like talk about how people change, let's talk about people who don't change. Have you ever heard of Harry Leslie Smith?
No.
He fought during the Second World War. He was a soldier during the Second World War. He might have been in the RAF, I can't remember. He's written multiple books about his time during the Second World War and then afterwards. About being in I think his family's from Australia, and he grew up in Barnsley, and he now lives in Canada. And he's active on Twitter. And he's in like his 90s. Harry Leslie Smith is very old, way older than Shatner. Harry Leslie Smith has been on the side of on the side of the left for a long time. He's a proper socialist. He's always been. And let's say he's in his 90s. He's way older than Shatner, but he is online daily, calling out the right, calling out these sort of things, the sort of things that Shatner said. So I don't know if age is really the factor that does it. I personally, because I've seen this happen with Notch. I wonder if it's more of a people, and I think it's less to do with age, and more to do with a lot of misunderstandings and a bit of privilege as well. Well, probably quite a lot of privilege, because you look at Notch. Notch is probably my age, probably your age, around that age. He was fine, brilliant person until he left Mojang. Suddenly, he's a very rich person with not a lot of things to do, because he's essentially retired. Very rich person, not a lot of things to do. And there's this great thing called the internet, and you spend a lot of time on it, and you end up in the wrong area. And these people in the wrong area can be very persuasive, incredibly persuasive, to the point of it being programming persuasive, to being cultish persuasive.
Well, I mean, it starts like all things, like proving religious, like God exists. Where people go, look at the human eye. It's really, really complex, and just like no other animal has an eye like us. It's like, yeah, they do. Chimps have exactly the same sort of eyes as us. Gorillas have the same sort of ocular system. We see what they see. They can see colours. They can identify colours and themselves in mirrors and shit. Yeah, and but when you first hear that, that's quite a persuasive thing. I remember there was a guy called a guy on YouTube that goes by Arch Warhammer, and he started just talking about Warhammer. Warhammer 40,000 and Warhammer Fantasy as tabletop games, and he had a big following on that. And then he drifted into sort of feminism bashing. Because someone said Warhammer 40,000 is a sexist game.
which it is.
Is it though?
Well, yeah. Have you actually read the book? I mean, okay, it is sexist in its. Well, okay, I would disagree that it's sexist generally, but I would say that its story is very much sexist. Its story is actually. I'm using the words wrong. I'll start again. I would not be sure about saying that it's a sexist game, but the backstory, the actual in-universe story, is a fascistic.
Oh yes, the whole idea
story.
of the human empire spreading out among the stars and wiping out anything
the
that isn't
Imperium.
like them. Yeah,
The Imperium in the game is a fascist dictatorship.
but they never make out like the Imperium's a good place to live.
No, they don't. And that's
point.
why I say I'm not sure if I would say the game itself is sexist, but the in-universe setting is it's fascistic.
They never make any bones about the world of the 40th millennium is a fun place to live, and this is how it should be.
Yeah.
It's
Now-
not like you're living in the worst time humanity's ever faced.
Yeah. Now, if you were going to say that, like, it's sexist on the grounds that you've got that almost every race hasn't got female combatants except for the Imperium, and then there are the Sisters of Battle, who are quite obviously sexualized.
There are female Imperial Guard characters.
There aren't models of them, I don't think, unless that's changed recently.
No, there are.
That must have changed recently, because I don't remember them being.
For
I
a
haven't
long
followed
time,
40k.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just
For a long
saying,
time.
so from my experience, there are Cadian infantry miniatures that are female.
Mhm.
There are command figures. Not in none of the generals are female, but there are female figures that you can have in the Imperial Guard setup. Space Marines are defined purely by the fact they're a monastic order.
Mm-hmm.
And balancing the Space Marines out, you've got the Sisters of Battle that are bio-enhanced in order to fight.
Yeah.
So there are two. They're basically, it's because they're genetic changes. They're designed for a particular type of genotype and chromosomal layout.
Yeah.
The Tau and the Eldar have female characters.
Yeah, actually, yes, they do.
The Orcs don't have female characters because they reproduce by subdivision. There's only one sex of Orcs. The Tyranids don't have gender in a way that we would understand.
No. I'm actually just suddenly thinking of, it might not even be that. Now that I think about it, it might not even be that. It might be the whole...
the community around it is like 99.99% recurring male.
That might be what it is.
But then go to an ordinary hobby shop that sells Airfix models.
Yeah, and it's the same.
And it's the same. There are some hobbies that are overwhelmingly male, and yes, we could do with changing those, but there's only a finite sort of person that's interested in assembling and painting 50,000 miniatures so you can spend an hour and a half playing 2 turns of a fucking game. The game is flawed because it's tedious.
Yeah, that's the problem. That is a problem, and but the solution for it's not simple, and it's not a solution I can even think about coming up with.
Yeah, but my point was that you can't really lay it at Games Workshop's door.
No, you can't.
And say thy game is sexist.
Yeah, I think I know what you were getting onto. You were getting onto people who were.
But I was getting on
things.
So that to me sounded like a reasonable proposition, given that I knew quite a lot about the universe. I'm sensible enough not to buy any of the models, but I think the universe itself is quite interesting. I like the fiction and stuff like that. Yeah. In the fiction, there are plenty of female characters. There are plenty of female characters that are not sexualized. There are plenty of female characters that are heroic and do have lots of laudable qualities. There are there aren't female characters that are polyanerized.
Yeah.
Or there are no Mary Sue characters in there. The female characters are written well.
Yeah.
Okay. And then somebody had a pop at it saying it was a sexist game, and this guy defended it in a way that I thought was quite reasonable. Then the guy proceeded to use that sort of people going, well, that sounds fairly reasonable, to take people down the rabbit hole. And then the guy went completely off tangent, and I stopped watching his videos.
Well, I'll explain how I ended up being an anti-feminist. until I actually watched a video on what feminism actually is, and that sort of like got me out of it. But I started off by watching 2 YouTubers, because at this point I was very hot off of reading Richard Dawkins stuff.
Oh yeah.
And I watched The Amazing Atheist and Thunderfoot. And Amazing Atheist just started off talking about atheism.
Yeah.
And Thunderfoot started off just talking about science. But then after they had a nice, good amount of people, they started talking about
I think
how
Thunderfoot
feminism
started off
bad.
doing things like solar roadways and stuff like that, and how it was bollocks.
Yeah.
And things like that, and pressure generated electricity and shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then he started talking about anti-feminism, and it was at that, and I didn't know any better, so I was listening to these and thinking, oh yeah, no, these are cogent arguments that they're putting forward. And it wasn't until later on that I realised that they were anything but good arguments. They were all full of strawmans, very bad arguments, very badly presented, but because they were very bad arguments, but because they were presented in a way that appealed to me at that point in time, and I had trusted these people because they were scientists and rationalists, I agreed with them. I thought, oh well, these people must be right. They must be right. And they brainwashed me, essentially. And it wasn't until some friends started saying, look, this is bullshit what you believe in. Have a look at this. Pointing me to a video that explained what feminism actually was, and was very in-depth about what it actually was. That it was sort of like a light bulb moment. Popped on. I was like, what I've been told is actually full-on bullshit.
Yeah. It is the danger. Being straw-manned, having someone that's not particularly erudite or aware of what they're doing, or how it could be misconstrued, or just flat out being wrong, and claiming to be for a particular movement. The problem with the internet is that it's a target-rich environment for that.
Yeah.
There are lots of people that don't really think through what they're trying to put across in a video.
No.
I mean, I have to say, everybody's guilty of fucking up. Do you remember that PMR radio video that we did for Rangers TV?
I do.
And at the bit of it, there's a bit I was tempted to re-edit until I got onto this sort of thinking. And there's a bit right at the end where I said, if you're going to buy a PMR radio, make sure you don't get a gay-looking one.
Yeah.
Which was funny between you and me.
Yeah.
And it's funny because half the people in that video are gay.
Mm-hmm.
More than half, actually. I think it's spot the token straight guy in that video.
Yeah.
I think it's me. I am token straight guy in that whole video.
Dragon straight as well.
Right.
And Mio, actually.
Right. So it's about...
Actually, no, it might have been 50-50 split.
Yeah. But that's still, sort of like... So half the people in that video are gay. And what you don't see is in the camera, behind the camera, everybody's standing around, and at the last minute I shoot into the make sure you don't get a gay looking one, which to you and me and the other guys there was a tee-hee-hee. Isn't that funny? Because we're all standing around.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot of gay men in camouflage running around in the woods with toy radios, really.
Yeah.
And it was funny to us because we're the only people that watch it.
Yeah.
There's only about 2,000 views on that video. The people that, most of the people that watch it are people that know us. So for us, it's funny. But for someone watching it out of context, not knowing who we are, if you just sat down, somebody that had never seen a Rangers TV or listened to Rangers radio, sat down and listened and watched that on its own, they think that's a pretty fucking homophobic comment. But to go back and explain it seems like, apologistic behaviour, almost.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for someone to send me a nasty comment and say, well, actually, you see all those people in that video, they're all gay and they're all listening to me saying that. And we had a good laugh about that.
Yeah.
It was...
I think you can apologise for something and it not be apologistic. It's only apologistic if you try and defend a flawed point.
Yeah.
And you can easily apologise for it by saying, we all, half the people in it are gay. We thought it was funny at the time.
We don't now.
We didn't think. We got to say we didn't think about how it would be perceived by other people.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm going to take the opportunity just to say that now. I might add on a bit of text on the video and re-upload it at some point.
Yeah.
In that, to put it in context, so you don't feel that an aggression has been perpetrated against gay people. What you got to understand is there's 6 people in that video, 3 of them are gay. We were all standing around when I said that, and we thought it was hilarious. But it fades out just before we're all laughing about it.
Yeah, you've got to make sure that you say we didn't think about how it could be received.
But in the group of gay friends that I have, saying something was gay as a pejorative was a kind of funny thing.
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
If
you just say that though, it sounds like you're being apologetic. But if you add on the thing to say, if you just make sure you add on the bit to say we didn't think about it, that's enough. Yeah. That's fine. But people understand it if you say we didn't think about it at the time.
It's time. We weren't thinking, how is this going to affect someone that wants to learn about radios that happens to be gay?
Mm-hmm.
We didn't even think about that because we were making the video for us.
It was a joke between us, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the number of times you were just, oh, God, your tent's gay.
Mm.
It's just like,
yeah.
It's like, just because you used to say it all the time. It was fucking funny coming off you.
I don't say it anymore, actually.
I know. I've noticed that.
Stopped
But at the time, it was just like, oh, I've just got this gay hunting knife. And it's just like, just like it was a way of taking it back.
Yeah, it was a way of taking it back. But the problem, and I've since essentially, I think I've grown up a little bit more and realised that you can only take it back if the people who are using it as a pejorative think that what you're doing to take it back is wrong.
Yeah.
Which is why I don't use gay or faggot ironically. I don't use either of those words ironically, because using them ironically is still nowadays. Well, I since realised, as I say, recently, using them ironically doesn't make the people. It doesn't help because the people who are using it negatively just see me as joining in with them. It's like
it's taken me like a little while to get used to people using the word queer in a non-pejorative way.
Yeah, that's one that's working. That is one that's working. Using queer in a non-pejorative is working.
Isn't it weird? Because queer used to be completely acceptable, say in the 50s and 60s, for something that was other, because that's what it means, other than normal.
Yeah.
If you read Enid Blyton, it's like, oh, queer goings on at the old rectory, which gives everybody a chuckle now. But
that's what it's been taken back to mean.
That was the word
just
being
that.
used in a completely innocent way.
Yeah.
Like, oh, how queer. There are German spies down by the shore. It's just shit like that.
It's being taken back to mean that as well now.
But queer was only a pejorative for a very short period of time. Queer was a pejorative inside my lifetime and now isn't, which is really interesting.
So sort of like, what, 3 decades?
Yeah. Because people would say, oh, that's quite... How queer? When I was a kid, people would say, genuinely meaning, not in a, well, that's quite homosexual in an outlook. They really meant how unusual.
Yeah.
You'd hear older people saying, well, how queer?
Well, it's the whole thing about
whereas those people would probably be too polite to ever, or not very homophobic in a way that they wouldn't say it's one of those bloody queers. But queer became a pejorative by the time I was about 10, through to very recently, and now it's been successfully taken back.
Yeah.
Inside a lifetime, it's changed its meaning and changed its impact twice.
Yeah.
That's how fast language moves.
Yeah. You can take a word back if you stop using it as a pejorative. So it's like with people of colour and the N-word.
Oh, I saw an interesting example of that.
They've taken it back as they don't use it as a pejorative. And also call out people who do use it as a pejorative.
Yeah, I mean, it is really weird in that people have fixed on the word rather than the intent behind the word.
Yeah.
And Reginald D. Hunter came afoul of that. And was removed from stage at a gig that he did.
Yeah.
I think it was for the Football Association or something like that. And he used the N-word. it's a word but is that in if you know the general consensus is unless you are black you may not use it.
Yeah.
But he uses it, and he, you know, I respect the man for his
Well,
views on
Reginald D.
racism.
Hunter is a person of colour.
What?
Reginald D. Hunter is a person of colour.
I know, yeah. So he used it on stage and said, you know, started spouting this in the manner of Chris Rock, and they asked him to leave the stage. So we can't have you using that.
I
word.
don't agree with that.
And he was just like, what?
To be honest.
But then he was on a chat show with Frankie Boyle, and he's been at the Oxford Union. And he said, look, you know, I know people that use that word that haven't got a racist bone in their body and don't use it specifically to refer to a black person. And I know people that won't use it that are racist. So it's all about a case of it almost is an example of somebody using the word, say, queer.
Yeah.
And somebody, you know, the difference between someone just mumbling under their breath fucking queers and the difference between, say, Laurie Penny saying I'm campaigning for genderqueer politics.
Yeah, I think it depends.
But that is a very difficult thing. Making people make a judgment call every time a word is used. It's almost like a kind of a background low level hum of sort of divisionist hatred.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to be very careful. It's context, time and place, and other things like that. They make it very. It's like with the N word, it's actually kind of cut and dry. And I don't agree with that situation where Reginald used it and was told to go off the stage because it's his word to use. He can use that word. Yeah. And there should be no problem with it. But from a certain
point of view, if you say some people of a certain skin tone can use it and other people may not, you are creating a division where none needed to exist.
The division.
It's harder to tell someone not to be a racist. It's easy to tell someone not to use a word.
That division will exist, and it's going to exist until we get away from racism fully. So
but I also heard...
This is the thing about when people say, oh, we should focus on all these fucking people saying word politics. And it's like, the word politics is always going to be there. We cannot focus on word politics. We have to focus on what's actually causing these things. And if someone says to you, don't use that word around me, respect them. It's not difficult to respect someone's wishes.
Yeah.
And this is how easy it is, and it's so not difficult. Someone says to you, I identify as X, please use these pronouns. It's not difficult.
Yeah. It's not especially
okay, you're gonna make a mistake every now and then. You know? But it's like people who call who use he when referring to Chelsea Manning. They're doing it specifically to disrespect her. Yeah.
When you deliberately sort of say, this person has chosen to be female, I will use the male pronoun. You're basically, you know, it's one of those things. People don't like having to do any extra work.
Yeah.
And if you universally vilify everybody that uses a particular word by mistake, there comes a point where there is always a backlash. Whereas some of those people didn't really care what gender that person was, and some of them really did.
You've got to be careful with that sort of thinking, though, because I know what you're saying, but sometimes it is accurate and sometimes it's not. There's been a whole thing recently with people, more centrist people, who consider themselves centrist but are actually more right wing than they realise. Who have used the arguments, I was not right wing until people started calling me a Nazi, and that made me become a right wing, which is a bullshit fallacy in itself, because you can easily prove it. Take a look at what the right were calling feminists for a long time, still do. They called them feminazis. That did not turn those feminists into Nazis. Did not turn them fascistic. Did not push them towards the right.
No, and I think the word Nazi is thrown around too much anyway. I think if you're actively marching behind a swastika, I think if somebody refers to you as a Nazi, then that's fair enough. I think if you have a right-wing view, then that might make you right-wing. It doesn't necessarily make you a Nazi.
It is. I think it is thrown around a lot, and I see it thrown around. Well, not thrown around a lot. I see it thrown around by people who are too young to really get the nuance.
Well,
that's the thing.
I've heard someone refer to a Nazi and then ask me who Hitler was, which was just fucking amazing. You've used a word and you had no idea what it meant. You had like zero idea, what that actually means. But the idea, I mean, if and it's a bit like fascists. When somebody, supports the status quo.
Yeah.
Say someone's conservative, small c. Because as you get older, you have more to lose.
Yeah.
When you're younger, you don't have anything. You don't have, considerable property to lose. You haven't amassed it in your lifetime. People amass wealth.
Yeah, I think that's a big problem in itself. The whole property as wealth thing. That causes a lot of that, to be honest.
It causes an awful lot of the evils in the world. People want to hang on to what they've worked for, what they feel they've worked for. People disassociate with the harm that they do by acquiring wealth and being acquisitive.
Yeah, it's like, in my opinion, people should have a right to a home. Okay, if in my ideal world, right? There would be no private landlords, but there would be small places where, say, like the local area could rent out built for specific things for people to have short-term rentals, right? So, say, like for students and the like. But no one who wanted a house would have to rent. Everyone would be able to buy their own house because there would be enough housing because we wouldn't have private landlords anymore.
Well, I'm
in my opinion, that's the if I was in charge, I'd get rid of private landlords entirely.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea of owning your own home is a really weird one. I know that in the modern, as things are, you're more secure if you own a house. In my ideal world, I would like to see you can rent a house or an apartment to the size of what you need from your local authority.
Actually, I see where you're going with this, and I'll retread I'll change what I said because I've just realised, and you were actually on a right point there. I would change it so that it would be okay. I would accept and be very happy with a situation where you could live in a house that you could call your own for the time that you are alive, and your descendants would have first dibs on it when you pass on, and it would only go back into the pool if they decided they didn't want it.
Yeah, I think if you had a situation where if you're working, they charge you X amount for living in the house. If you're unemployed, you don't pay rent.
Well, that's what I was going to get to.
And
if you're unemployed or retired,
say, I've just been fired, or I had just retired, they stop charging you rent.
Yeah, you would only be paying rent while you're working. So the second you retire, that's it. You stop working. You stop working. You stop paying rent on your house anymore.
Yeah.
And technically, the house is owned by the state or the local area, but they've got no right to evict. You take away eviction rights. They've got no right to evict you. Because for all intents and purposes, it belongs to you. You're allowed to do renovations. You're allowed to change it how you want, etc. You just take away the ownership bit.
Yeah, I mean the idea that say if you buy a house and you're in your 30s or your 40s and you buy a house, by the time you've paid it off, you're retired. So, and if at any time you don't pay the mortgage, the bank take it off you.
This is the thing. This is why we want to buy a house, because I don't want to get to being retirement age and still renting. I want to have dealt with the mortgage by the time I've retired. So all I have to think about is council tax and the other little bills. I don't have to worry about paying for the technically privilege of living somewhere. I think that's the main thing, is living in a building, having a roof over your head with the current situation is a privilege. It's not a right.
Yeah.
And that's wrong. It should be completely the other way around. Living under a roof should be a right. You should have a right to a house that has enough space for you. If not more.
But yeah, it's... where were we? Yeah, so...
Yeah, we did tangent a bit there, didn't we?
Yeah, we tangented hard.
Yeah, getting back to the thing, there's something that's happened like last year with a YouTuber named JonTron.
Yeah.
Who I've liked for a long time. And then, but he started to really annoy me with some of the things he was saying. And then he turned into a complete alt-right sympathizer. And that was it. I can't now go back and watch the stuff he's done anymore. Because it reminds me of who he is now. Because it's so recent. The stuff he's done so recently is so fresh in my memory. And every time I watch them, I'm thinking, is he thinking those same things right now? Shatner, on the other hand, it's a little bit different because it's so far in the past. And he was doing different things back then. Because you said he was standing up when he was protesting at the time. He was protesting on that side, on the right side at the time. So you can look back at it and you can watch Star Trek and you think, yeah, no, at this point in time, Shatner was doing these good things. It's like I can't watch the thing of Stephen Fry doing any sort of talking around the time he was being a dick, because he was being a dick at that time. I can watch stuff. I can watch when he was doing a little bit of Fry and Laurie and be absolutely fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit like, Jermaine Greer. Fueled the whole turf fire. Yeah. And you just think of all those things that you did that were, that were laudable. I mean, it's difficult.
Yeah.
But that's down to fragmentation of belief. I think during second wave feminism, it was obviously a good thing to be fighting for that. Yeah. And to focus all your energies on combating this sort of major problem in society.
The thing with the TERFs right now is it's a thing between people, feminists who believe, the TERFs who believe that a woman is born a woman. Essentially, you've got feminists in the TERFs who reject the idea, the factual part of gender identity. They reject the gender spectrum, essentially. So in their minds, trans people will always be the sex they were assigned at birth, because in their minds, a sex is a binary thing. Whereas we know from science that it's not a binary thing. And that's the problem with that. That's why you've got the TERFs. The TERFs are just there because they... Go on.
There's also a backlash against bisexual people.
Yeah, there's always been a backlash against bisexual people. Bisexual people have always been looked down upon, even within the LGBT community. Oh, yeah. I've seen this. And there have been people like, oh, you're bi. Can't decide on who you want. And it's just like, no, it's not like that. I've seen it. There are people in the LGBT community who are prejudiced. And that's really not good.
Yeah, I find it really weird. I mean, I've seen... I saw yesterday, Pride is coming up this weekend, I think. Yeah, it's this weekend in Manchester. It only seems like a couple of months ago since the last one. And it's LGBT. Yeah. Not LGBTQ. Yeah. Well,
LGBT, that's because the whole bringing back queerness is kind of recent. There's a lot of places that haven't changed or caught up with that, with the naming. And there are some places that still call themselves LGBT, but do recognise queerness. Yeah. What I think's more telling is there are people out there who are trying to get the T taken out of LGBT, who just want it to be LGB.
Well, how long before it's LG? Yeah. Or G.
Yeah.
Or L.
Well, we've got to remember that, like, for a long time, it was called the gay liberation. It wasn't LGBT, it was just gay. He was for that
see,
for a while.
I don't really see the differentiation between gay and lesbian.
No, there really isn't. That's just two different names for the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, gay doesn't imply a particular gender.
No, it doesn't. That's why there's a lot of women who call themselves gay.
Oh yeah,
than
lesbian. Most of the lesbian women I grew up around referred to themselves as gay.
Yeah.
Which is another word that's changed its meaning inside my lifetime. I do remember hymns in the hymn book at school that we probably didn't sing, but use the word gay, meaning happy.
Yeah.
And it's just like, wow, it's just like that's inside my life. Maybe it will change again. Maybe gay will go back to meaning happy, or refer to a state of relative happiness and not to a decision on sexuality.
Yeah. You probably will do.
Oh yeah, language is extremely fluid. I mean, another example of that, I was watching a very good not a documentary, a debate on reparations for African Americans. And one of the people that was speaking up for reparations, but in the form of investment in education and housing and healthcare, to sort of like level up the playing field a little bit.
Yeah.
Referred to African Americans as blacks. Now, I knew her heart was in the right place.
Yeah.
But she was very white to be using that term.
Yeah.
And I flinched every time that she said blacks. Like, you're on the side of, a positive change. But even in that debate, the whole debate got entirely skewed, where reparations for some people in the audience, they didn't define the terms of reparations. Reparations for some people in the audience and the people arguing against and for it, in some people's minds, meant sending every black person in America a check.
Yeah.
Which was very disingenuous.
It is.
Because some people that were on the pro-reparations side were talking about education and investment and sort of like repairing the economic divide.
Yeah.
And making it possible for people to get jobs and be educated and do well in their lives. And even survive till the age of 30. And some people were referring to reparations as just a check, like a monetary amount to people that, technically speaking, had never been slaves. I would argue the point, though, because I think forced prison labour is slavery.
Yeah.
And some of those people are in prison for things that really aren't prison offences if you're white.
Well, there's
like possession of marijuana or speeding.
And there's also this stereotype against it as well. I mean, there's that guy recently who was sent down for a crime, and turns out the DNA evidence was false. They've got fresh evidence that proves he wasn't there. Marcellus, I can't remember his surname, and the appeals court said no. Even though the evidence is there, he's still gonna be executed. The people of that state had to petition their governor for a stay of execution, and the petition went to the governor the day of the execution. It was like a last minute call that said, "This guy, do not execute this guy. I want a special investigation open to look at this." Because the evidence
that is
now
the problem with the death penalty.
Yeah. It is.
You can sort of make up financially for someone having been in prison wrongly. You can sort of allow them to rebuild their lives, even though you've stolen all that time from them.
Yeah.
But there's nothing you can do once someone's dead. False convictions come up all the time.
Yeah, and it's more likely to happen with people of colour because there's a stereotype against it.
Well, it's something like, 1 in 4 African American men are in jail.
Something like it's a
or
very large
will
number.
serve jail time in their lifetimes, or something like that. It's just a huge amount. There's something like 1.5% of Americans' population is in prison, and they say that there's no correlation between private prisons and the jump in the prison population.
Private prisons, it's the worst thing possible.
It's a sickening idea. But this whole reparations debate was real interesting, in that some people who were arguing against reparations were only arguing against black people being sent a check.
Yeah.
they were for investment in those communities to sort of, so people weren't living in poverty and then turning to crime as the only employment option in certain areas.
Well, this is what happens, isn't it? It's like you get.
So unless you define the terms well ahead of time, you can't fight for a goal.
That's part of the reason. Again, this is going back to me being an anti-feminist for a period of my life. It was because the definition, I thought I had a skewed definition that had been given to me by one person. And it wasn't the correct definition.
No.
So you've got, like with this thing you were talking about, the reparations, the people who were arguing against it had a skewed definition of what reparations meant.
And it's that confusion people have, because people like to group people. You can recognize and like and dislike and form an opinion about around 120 people.
Yeah.
They've worked it out. It's called the monkey sphere. There is a certain number of people you can recognize and care enough about to know about them. Know what their name is, know who they are, what their relationship to you is, all that sort of shit. You can't remember loads of people. So human beings naturally group people together. And when you've got a clear definition of what those people believe in and what motivates them, you can fairly make an assumption.
Yeah.
You know, so if someone says, I am a feminist, in my mind, that means someone that's intelligent enough to realise that the playing field is not level, and they will do what they can inside their lives as what they can achieve to correct people and make sure that, hateful words aren't used, the rape culture isn't reinforced, that inequality isn't reinforced, that people don't judge someone just because of their reproductive organs. And I think most right-thinking people can get behind that definition of feminism.
Yeah.
In fact, the simplest I've ever heard it was an overheard conversation, and it came up on Facebook, and I don't know who it was that said it, but there was a mother and daughter on a train, and the daughter announces that she's not a feminist. And the mother just looks at her and goes, do you want to choose who you sleep with and own things? And the girl goes, yes, of course. And she goes, then you're a feminist. And that's the easiest definition. People want to be treated equally regardless of their gender.
Yeah.
And I think most people can get behind that. The vast majority of human beings feels that's an okay thing. Certainly, even if you don't as a young person, when you have if you're the father of a daughter or the mother of a daughter, you realise that you want to leave the world in slightly better shape than you found it.
Yeah.
For that child, it's a common motivation. So when you say, this is a girl child, I want her to feel that she can achieve anything that she's capable of, and not be dismissed from what she chooses to do as a result of her reproductive organs. And most people can get behind that. The same thing with racism and homophobia. Who you sleep with has nothing to do with me, and does not affect should not affect how I view you, or whether I employ you, or how you're treated under the law.
Yeah.
Similarly, the colour of your skin. And those are things that the vast majority of human beings can get behind.
Yeah.
There are a few religious intolerant people that genuinely do believe women are lesser than, homosexuals should be put to death, black people should not be tolerated in a civilized society, all that sort of shit. But that's a very tiny minority. So this is the wounding thing about it, because then because nobody, right thinking people can't assail those inalienable things. So what those people do, because they want to feel superior to someone, they'll pick some random statement that's taken either out of context or has been not really thought about when the person said it. But that person, because they are of that group, is then plucked out of obscurity to represent that group. It's a bit like the whole freedom of speech thing. It's all that sort of thing. I should be free to be as homophobic or as racist as I want. And you are. But you're not free to never be questioned on it.
Exactly.
If you're in a public forum and say, I don't know, all red-headed people need to be put to death because it's weakening the white race that we've got these freckly red-headed bastards running around that can't go out in sunlight and shit. And yes, you can say that, and in this country and in America, no one will actually arrest you for it.
Yeah.
Unless you incite other people. There's a ginger person, we must kill him now, and incites the group to perform violence. Then you can be arrested for it. But at that point, it's all like, I just don't like red-headed people.
Mm-hmm.
Then somebody's going to say, well, what makes a red-headed person different? Oh, they're weedier than other people. And then you say, well, I'm sorry, that's bullshit.
Yep.
They're not as intelligent as brown or blonde-haired people. Well, that too is bullshit. You know, and somebody's saying, well, I've got freedom of speech. And you say, you're still speaking bullshit.
Yep.
And those are the examples I use. When somebody goes racist or homophobic on me, I start screaming about, you know, sort of like somebody that, you know, where they have a characteristic like they've got brown eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And I just start saying, you know, brown-eyed people are lazy and shifty and they'll steal anything. Science has proved that brown-eyed people are, you know, just slightly less intelligent than blue-eyed people. And you just go right into it until that person then quietly goes, I've got brown eyes.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, have you? Oh, I'm sorry, we can't hang out anymore. They're like, you are joking. Yes, I am, but I'm underlining this whole thing. You're getting into a froth about something that doesn't affect you in any way. And the broad strokes of equality are most people can get behind. It's just when the only way that these people that want to sort of spout fascist or right-wing ideals and try and those ideals involve putting someone else down. The problem with the internet is you can always find some idiot that is part of that group.
Yeah.
That says some mad bullshit. You know, just spout something like, you know, oh right, you know. I'm trying to think of an example. There's not much of that in the feminist world.
Speak just very quickly. Interestingly, you mentioned this free speech bit. And a lot of people in America will mention the First Amendment when they talk about their free speech.
Yeah.
The First Amendment is very specific, though. First Amendment prevents the government from impeding your speech.
Yes.
Just the government, nothing else.
It doesn't mean that YouTube can't ban your video or Twitter can't suspend your account.
Doesn't mean that you can't. That doesn't mean that doesn't mean that it protects you from people preventing you from having a platform.
Yeah.
People and companies can prevent you from having a platform. What it means is that the government will never impose laws that prevent you from saying things. So you'll never get like a hate speech law in America.
No.
Like you have here in the UK. In the UK, there is hate speech laws.
There's the incitement to racial, religious, and gender violence.
Mm-hmm.
You can't sort of stand up and say, let's start stringing people up right now.
Yeah, that's slightly different than that's slightly different than like the whole free speech argument. But
your own personal opinion, you're free to state.
Yeah, exactly.
But you're not free to get a platform. The Guardian does not have to publish your rant on black people.
Yeah, and it also
YouTube does not have to host your channel.
Yeah, and it also doesn't prevent people from calling you out for your bullshit.
And that's that. I have the ability to call people out for their bullshit. I mean, I would like to see, you know, one of these people that sort of like, you know, says this person is an absolute loon.
Mm-hmm.
It would be fair enough if you then balanced it out to, however, this person speaking on feminist issues has got it exactly right and has nailed it down in 5 points.
Yeah.
And makes it easily understandable. And this is brilliant. This is exactly what I want to see. This is someone explaining their viewpoint succinctly.
Yeah. If I ever find that video again, I'll link you to it. Because it was a good video.
There was one person, there is one video, and it went a bit viral on Reddit and places like that, where this woman is completely freaking out at someone that's giving a speech.
Oh, I know which one you mean, the woman with the red hair.
And then really, really freaking out when somebody tells her to shut up. Screaming about freedom of speech, and it's like, this is not your platform, you know.
It was, she was massively taken out of context.
Yeah.
On purpose, because it was the right wing filming her. There's actually had an interview with her, and it's like totally different than what it's shown us.
There was also a case at one of the universities.
Chanty Binks, that's her name. Chanty Binks.
And there was also another one where a film journalist was filming a rally on university property.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody walks up to him and sort of like says, you can't film here.
Yeah.
and it's in a public space in the university. Like, members of the public can come to this space.
Mm.
And she actually physically attacks the cameraman.
Let me find this. Here we go. Chanty Binks. Canadian feminist who confronted some men's rights activists outside of an event at the University of Toronto. A woman known as Chanty Binks was trying to argue a point, but they kept interrupting her. She raised her voice and told them to shut up, drop the F-bomb. She was, as she admits, a bit rude to them, more than a bit. One thing that was different about the confrontation, it was caught on video, uploaded to YouTube, blah, 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 blah. At that point, a vast army of the world's worst people decided to do their best to make her a life a living hell. Binks was besieged with insults, misogynistic slurs, and grotesquely violent threats. She was doxxed. Artists drew pictures of her engaging in sex acts. She laid low for 3 years. Blah, 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 blah.
Oh yeah, I mean that's totally despicable. I mean, the only approach I've ever seen that works consistently, if there's someone whose views you find abhorrent, is kind of the Louis Theroux method.
Yeah,
is completely flatly report how they say and basically be absolutely vanilla, and just go, right, okay, so you're saying this, this, and this, and then just be incredulous. Just say, I'm sorry, I'm not even sure how you even arrive at that viewpoint.
Yeah.
Where does this come from? You know, what evidence do you base this view on? And once you start questioning people, so it's a little bit like when Jehovah's Witnesses come or Mormons come to my door and start, you know, hassling me, and making me panic about the afterlife and stuff like that. I invite them in and just discuss it with them.
The thing about Chanty Binks, where I'm not like, I've seen the video and it's edited to make it look like she's a raving feminist. Oh, ranting, blah, blah, blah. Look at this woman. She's so angry. The problem is that during this time, and it still is to this day, but a lot more people are wise to it, they had a new tactic at that point. And that new tactic was to continually interrupt people and not let them finish what they're saying. You continually interrupt. And it's designed, it's a thing that's designed to inflame people, to make people angry. So the reason she lost her temper and was shouting was because they had designed the whole thing to make her angry. They were purposely pushing her buttons.
And there must be some sort of strategy where you can basically challenge that. You know,
you need to have other people with you.
Yeah, you need to have other people with you, and you need to have like a backup film crew and say, right, if you're filming me, I'm going to film this.
I'm filming this.
So I'm not taken out of context.
Yeah, you need to have people with you who can turn around and say, hang on, you're doing that to make that. But you need to have someone who is your friend, but also outside of it. So they're not directly in the conversation, but they can go, hang on, wait, you're trying to take her out of context with that. You're trying to make her angry.
Or if
you're trying to do X, Y, Z.
If you're getting angry, tag team someone else in. Tag someone else in and just say, right, you're making me really angry with this strategy. I need bigger guns. You know, and I'm not trying to mansplain how to be an activist.
Oh yeah. Well,
I'm just saying that there have always been strategies that work. Yeah. And this is where leadership comes in, and some kind of like, look, this is the direction, this is the point we want to go in.
Yeah. The interesting thing I saw this video once, because Thunderfoot has done this tactic as well before. He's used the same tactic to get people angry to prove his point.
In one of his own videos, he gets really angry, and he included that in his video, just of him like deliberately missing the point.
Someone actually used their tactic on him. Yeah. And he felt it's so hard. It really is so hard. That's the problem with trying to film these individual debates that are happening at rallies like that, because tensions get flared.
But at the same time, I'm very aware of my privilege looking at these examples, in that I'm not physically threatened by these people.
Yeah,
I'm not surrounded or in a position where I'm worried about my own personal safety. I would be approaching that with a certain amount of white male privilege.
Yeah, that's same.
Which is another thing that needs to be more carefully explained to people, and there are videos about it that are very concise and good.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, they're in amongst thousands of videos that are really shit.
Yeah, unfortunately, that was
You
the
know.
thing. I saw someone that the same video I saw that explained to me what feminism was also explained very well what white male privilege was, and
Yeah.
then I understood it.
You know, and it's one of those things that, again, you know, almost needs to be in the educational system. You know, the concept of privilege, but you know, also the concept of white female privilege.
Yeah, there is a little bit. There's a little, not nowhere near as much as on the male, but there is a little bit.
But it is an interesting thing. It's always, you know, it is why leadership is a good thing. You can have an anarchistic society, but at that point you've got situations where without leadership people just go and spout random shit and you have to go and correct it. Whereas with leadership you can have, this is the, you know, the feminists of the world, which I don't expect to ever get organized, just in the same way as I don't expect any group to be worldwide organized. But if there was a guy, okay, we're going to go for very broad strokes so everybody can get behind it, but this is the general gist.
Yeah.
You know, it explained in a very straightforward and simple way. Don't tell me to go, you know, it's pointless to tell someone that disagrees with you to go and read a 500-page book.
Well, exactly, you can't.
Because they're just not going to. It's easy
There might
to
be
say,
something they can. It might be something they could read after they've come around.
An A5 flyer.
Not to get them around.
You know, here is a flyer. This is the general overview of what we believe to be fair. You know, and you know, there are things, you know, rather than try and, you know, it almost looks, if you're on the outside of it, and when before I would have said I'm an egalitarian rather than a feminist.
Yes.
Now I would, because it in some people's minds writes a few immediate misconceptions, I would now say feminist.
Yeah, same.
And, you know, into equality for everybody. So, you know, I'm not ever going to wear the t-shirt that says this is what a feminist looks like, because I think that's so co-opted and fucked up. But if anybody says something that's madly sexist in my presence, I like to think that I'm on the ball enough to sort of go, oh, hang on.
Yeah.
You know, I don't get in the kind of, you will now apologise and grovel on your knees for being incorrect, but I will explain my position on it and not be in agreement. The same way as if someone's homophobic in my earshot or racist in my earshot, I'll actually go and say, look, you know, that was a very racist comment, or that was a very sexist comment.
Yeah.
Or that was very homophobic of you. And because the worst thing you can do is think, oh, I can't be bothered. Because the person saying that will assume your agreement. And will then feel emboldened to take yet another step. The crowd's with me, how far can I go?
Exactly.
And then you get Hitler.
Yeah.
You know,
I think we've covered pretty much everything there.
Yeah. But it's an interesting thing. It's and I wish there was more. That's why I like the Black Panthers so much. There was leadership, there was a stated goal. You know, and they worked towards that.
Yeah.
Whereas with the internet being so random, you know, people can be, you know, like we've both been seduced into believing something is so when it clearly isn't.
Yeah.
Because of a straw man argument where somebody has produced, in inverted commas, evidence. And it seems reasonable. Whereas, you know, the broad strokes of it aren't.
Yep.
You know, racism, homophobia and sexism and any oppression of anybody is bad. Because those aspects are the least important aspects of that person.
Yeah.
Their skin colour, who they like to sleep with, and what their reproductive organs are.
It really is.
Are the least important things about any human. Who they are and what they stand for is much more interesting. What they're capable of and what they actually do.
Exactly.
So yeah, I'd say, you know, but going back to it, you know, it's you know, going back to the Shatner thing. It's because these things don't ever seem to be explained simply that you know, somebody will go down the rabbit hole and wander off track, then get accused of, you know, not being up for it. Why have you muted? Which has been accused of, and you go down the rabbit hole based on just some spurious fringe thing. Whereas, you know, I like to believe that William Shatner isn't racist or homophobic or sexist. Anyway, so Graafen's now muted. I think that covers it all. I'm rather than sort of like muck about with this, so there is a couple of links. That's our discussion for this week. There's a couple of links. There's a couple of three YouTube videos for our links. One is What's Inside a Throwaway Charger by Big Clive, which is a very worthy, interesting video about wastefulness.
Sorry about that.
No worries. I was just going on to the links.
Okay.
So what's in have you seen that video, What's Inside the Throwaway Charger by Big Clive?
I have seen that, yeah.
Oh, that's just amazingly wasteful.
It so is.
There's like one chip you could put in it so you could recharge it. A chip and a socket, like 2p's worth of materials.
Can make it rechargeable one.
Yeah, would make it rechargeable. And you're just like, oh, you thoughtless bastards. And H3H3 Productions, who I've got a bit of a soft spot for. Don't agree with them all the time, but they won a landmark fair use lawsuit.
Yeah, I don't watch their stuff. I don't particularly agree with them, but I am very happy about this. This is a fantastic win.
But yeah,
because they essentially just the court essentially just hammered out exactly what is fair use and critique on YouTube. It's brilliant.
Yeah, basically the judge basically says, "Shut up, you whiny bastard."
Yeah.
You put something stupid on the internet. These people disagree with you, and because you were so hurt about them disagreeing with you, you decided to try and sue them. That's not what the courts are for. And yeah, I hope they get all their legal costs back.
I hope so, yeah.
Even though they crowdfund it, and I hope they do something interesting with those legal costs. But I'm sure they will. But yeah, I mean, it's just like I think what I like about them is that they will attack people in that sort of for being sort of completely vacuous.
Yeah.
And if you look at the people they do attack, there's some vacuous motherfuckers out there.
Oh yeah.
And they need to be sort of like, you know, like the whole, I'm not going to name anybody because I don't want anybody to see their videos. But there was an example of a guy that did vines and tweets and YouTube that had like 50,000 followers.
Yeah.
That was just being hideously rude to a security guard outside the VidCon, which is the YouTube convention, and really getting in this guy's face and being very personal because the guy wouldn't let him in because he wasn't on the guest list.
Yeah,
the guy was just trying to blag his way in, and then started resorting to personal remarks about how the guard was dressed and how he was famous and people followed him and how he was so important.
Yeah.
But the most wonderful revenge is that people went round the convention after that and showed them the footage of this arrogant little dick being an arrogant little dick. And they said, you know, wouldn't it be funny if the guard had more Twitter followers and YouTube followers? Because he's got a YouTube account, he's got Twitter, than this vacuous little prick. And got everybody to sign on to his YouTube channel and his Twitter feed. And got like 78,000 people to sign up.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So that security guard is now more famous than this vacuous little prick. Which I love. I think that's the best revenge, is living well.
Oh yeah.
And that was a non-violent way to really put someone in their place and punish someone for being a really hideous human being. And hopefully that person will learn something from it. And so I'm quite a big fan of, you know, I mean, it's not what you should dedicate your life to in the world as I see it. If you've got that much time and you're that successful and you've got that much of a platform, it would be cool if you did some broader stroke cool shit with it.
Yeah.
But that's what they're choosing to do. And yeah, somebody's got to take out this shit, because it's making the world a really miserable and horrible place. So I think they're doing good on the whole. Yeah. And they're very funny. The weird thing about Healer is that she seems to be just like there most of the time. Like he's spouting off about what's vacuous and stuff, and she's sort of agreeing with them. But she is really smart. I've watched quite a lot of the videos, and when she does sort of like say something, she really thought about it. So she's just quiet rather than, you know, just there. But she is very funny when she gets a groove on and gets really pissed off about something. She's extremely eloquent and funny about it. And a really good lecture about Thomas Paine by Christopher Hitchens, the late lamented Christopher Hitchens. And may I just add, fuck you to those people who said he recanted and became a Christian on his deathbed.
Really? People have been saying that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Fuck those people. So, to just try and undermine who he was. I mean, he wasn't the most agreeable human being on the planet. You know, he did smack down, you know, some well-meaning people in his time. He did trample a few people underfoot.
He did a bit, yeah.
You know, he would not back down on his viewpoint. I mean, he didn't sort of like just get in people's face and froth and say fuck you to people that tried to sort of like, you know, talk about religion as a force for good.
Yeah.
But I can see at what point, you know, how that would be anger making.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's it's a good lecture about Thomas Paine.
Okay.
And who is a worthwhile person learning, you know, to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first abolitionists. That's why he got thrown out of America in the 1770s. They said all men are created equally. He went, great, including the black ones, and they went, no, not the black ones. And he said, And there's an interesting bit about the Louisiana Purchase, which I didn't know much about, being British. It's a big thing in America. And it's worth mentioning here in that the Americans bought Louisiana off the French.
Yeah.
And Louisiana at the time was what was called a free state, a state where slavery was illegal.
Yeah.
And they dismantled that. The American government dismantled that freedom in its early days. They made slavery legal in a free state, and it was the first free state. And it was a very there were lots of African Americans living there in freedom, building basically a civilization from the ground up and doing very well.
Yeah.
And then that was all taken away from them, and they were resold into slavery, a lot of them.
Wow.
Yeah. So a dark day, and it was one of the things Jefferson was trying to stop.
Yeah.
And it was something that Thomas Paine absolutely lost his fucking shit over. Like, really went to town, went spare when he found out it was going to happen. Because initially, when Washington announced he was going to purchase Louisiana at 10 cents an acre, Thomas Paine went, brilliant, because they've got it going on there. They've got proper freedom for everybody.
Yeah.
To which George Washington must have been thinking, yeah, right, we'll change that shit. And then they booted him out of America. He died. He died in America, and then they tried to repatriate his body and lost it. They just misplaced the bones, and it got lost in the sea voyage. So there is no Thomas Paine doesn't have a grave. But yeah, it's an interesting lecture, and it's interesting. It talks mostly about the American history of Thomas Paine. But it was an interesting person. If you are interested in Thomas Paine, watch the Mark Steele lecture. 25 minutes.
Mark Steele lectures are brilliant.
Yeah, if you want to know about someone, and Mark Steele's done a lecture on him. Good lecture on Muhammad Ali as well in the later ones that weren't on video, they were just radio. Yeah. Well, that's been our show. By my count, it's a little over an hour and a half. We were trying to do an hour. We didn't manage it. We didn't manage to get it down to an hour. But yeah, thank you very much for listening. If you've listened this far, which you probably haven't, or you've let it run in the car, so you've got something to listen to. But yeah, we'll try and make these a lot more regular and try and get some more output together.
I'll try to, yeah.
Yeah, try and get some stuff done. Anyway, so yeah, and there'll be some outro music, I'm sure.
Yep.
But I'm coming to the conclusion that unknown bands, it doesn't make any difference as far as YouTube's concerned, whether your band is an unknown band that you've got permission to play.
Yeah.
Or whether it's a mainstream band. The YouTube whining is pretty much the same.
Okay.
These days. So I might just pick some wacky music.
Okay.
Just from my vinyl collection. Collect vinyl. Be a curator of
Vinyl is pretty
the
awesome.
mother format. Oh yes, I've got some fantastic records. I've bought some really weird records.
Yeah.
I was going to be mean on the Scratch Vinyl radio show and make people listen to Calling Occupants of Interplanetary Craft by the Carpenters, because I had a sci-fi theme for the last episode, but I didn't feel like being that mean.
Yeah.
So I went for the Flash Gordon theme tune because it's got Brian Blessed on it.
Oh, it does.
Gordon's alive!
Oh, Brian Blessed's brilliant.
He's been in virtually every British science fiction TV series that there's ever been.
He really has. He's been in so much.
There's a very good documentary with him and Brian Cox talking about British science fiction.
Yeah.
And Brian Blessed's in everything.
He really is. It's incredible.
He was in The Survivors, Space 1999, Doctor Who, Blake 7, Journey into Space. He's been on fucking everything.
He really has.
And he's climbed Mount Everest.
Oh, yes, and he's been to the North Pole as well.
He's a fucking loony. Climbed Mount Everest in his 60s.
I think he has. I think he's been to the North Pole. Is it North Pole that has polar bears?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been to the North Pole.
But that's who you want if you see a polar bear.
A polar bear.
I can see that.
Mm.
Brian Blessed, if you're American, is kind of like the Brian Boitano of the UK. Brian Boitano can do everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. Good man. The Yorkshireman as well.
Yeah. It's just one of our great eccentrics.
Yeah.
Just somebody you'd like to have a pint with, but wouldn't necessarily feel that sure of being in a fist fight with.
No.
Just be like, oh, he's 70 odd, but I don't know. Like Sean Connery.
Yeah.
Oh, I watched a mad film the other day. I watched A Bridge Too Far again the other day.
Oh yeah.
That's hilarious.
Speaking of films, I was having a bit of a mini private rant the other day as I was watching James Bond films, and noticed that for some reason Never Say Never Again is in my collection, and I'm like, that's not a James Bond film. Because, well, okay, the character's called James Bond. It's like the same reason that the original Casino Royale is not a James Bond film, even though James Bond's in it. Because James Bond films are only made by Eon.
Yeah.
The people can say that they've made a film with a character called James Bond in it, but it's not made by Eon.
The Lone Gunman TV series has a character called James Bond in it.
Yeah.
Jimmy Bond, their intern. You know. Yeah, I think you can Never Say Never Again and Casino Royale can be referred to as bootleg James Bond.
Yeah.
I think, you know, they're funny. They're very tongue-in-cheek. And Eon thought about suing Never Say Never Again and the production team.
Yeah.
And then decided not to because it was so tongue-in-cheek. It'd be a bit like Christianity trying to sue Monty Python for Life of Brian.
Oh, yeah.
It would be such a farcical lawsuit. Because it is self-referential and does take the piss out of itself all the way through. Particularly Never Say Never Again.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that James Bond is, you know, as an idea and a character, and the person that wrote it were just... there's nothing laudable really about them. They're just silly.
No, they are. They're just silly films.
You know, but unfortunately, they're that brand of silly that gets taken slightly seriously by the wrong people.
Yeah.
You know, they're sort of like the endless machismo, and you know, I mean, and you don't want to read the original Ian Fleming books. You really don't. They're just the most homophobic, misogynistic things in the universe. I think that's kind of why I prefer Roger Moore as Bond over Sean Connery, because Roger Moore, you could really get the tongue-in-cheek with Roger Moore. You do get the feeling that Roger Moore's going to burst out laughing at any second because of the ridiculous of it. Yeah, I'm going to get my submarine car and get that sort of shit sorted out now. And it is just sort of like, especially when he's getting older and the Bond girls are getting younger. Just like, well, this is very realistic. And it's just the way, if you ever see Sean Connery interviewed, it's really funny. Yeah. Because it's like, you know, what would you have done? People started assuming I was an actor. And I just went with it, and they paid me loads of money to run around and say the most stupid, ridiculous shit. But they were paying me, you know. I mean, this is someone that was Ivanhoe and the Saint. Yeah. You know, it's just like, I really can't believe I keep getting hired. You know, he'd even nearly told Cubby Broccoli to go fuck himself at one point when they said, you know, oh, we need you to get a haircut. So he goes and get a haircut, and he goes, we need you to put on a bit of weight. And Sean Connery eventually just went, just get a thinner person with less hair. If that really is what matters to you, just find that person. Stop trying to fuck with me. Don't do it then. I've got loads of money. I don't care. But he's actually, you know, one of those. He's a real gent when he's interviewed. He's very funny. Oh yeah. Despite the fact that he's in these sort of like just ridiculous films. You know, James Bond is kind of like the English Captain Kirk. It is, yeah. You know, sort of like, I'll land on an alien planet and immediately seduce anything female within 500 yards. Because I'm fucking Captain Kirk. Yep. But yeah. It was supposed to be Leonard Nimoy in that interracial kiss anyway. Was it? Yeah. Ah. In the original script, it's Spock.
Interesting. I didn't know
But
that.
Shatner was like, it will blow people's fucking minds, because an alien kissing Uhura is one thing.
Yeah.
The mega white Captain Kirk kissing Uhura, they're going to lose their shit about it.
Oh,
and Gene
yeah,
Roddenberry went,
definitely.
yeah, they probably will. Let's do it. I like it when people just say, fuck it, let's do it.
Yeah.
What'll happen? Which is much more funny when people do lose their shit. When in advance you knew they lose their shit, than say The Life of Brian, where people were amazed that people lost their shit.
Oh, yeah. Because they Life of Brian, they weren't expecting the amount of backlash they got because they thought they'd written it.
They made it
And
really
made it
clear that
clear
it
that
wasn't Jesus.
Yeah.
They flat
really
out
did.
say, this is not the baby Jesus.
But it's like right at the beginning of the film where it's like, oh, he's the Messiah. What's he? Who is this? It's Brian. And then they go and look outside and they think he's the Messiah. And they go look outside and they find that the stars actually over a different stable.
Yeah,
And that's
they will
where
fuck
Jesus
off.
actually is.
Yeah. And Brian goes on to a life of obscurity.
Yeah.
You know, it's just the
And
people.
And he goes to the Sermon on the Mount. Brian goes to the Sermon on the Mount.
Yeah, he's at the Sermon on the Mount watching
Yeah.
Jesus.
It's not a piss take of Jesus. It's a piss take of people mistaking him for Jesus.
Yeah.
It's
Well-
less about Christianity and more about how people can mistake. It's one of those farces. It's one of those mistaken identity farces.
Well, I mean, it's a bit like The Great Dictator.
Oh, I need to watch that.
It's bloody good.
Because that's Charlie Chaplin's character getting mistaken for an analogy of Hitler.
Yeah.
And he has I've seen the speech at the end, and it's a beautiful speech.
But there is it's full of really great moments.
Isn't that like the first talk he did? The first time he did a film, and he doesn't actually say anything until that
Yes.
speech at the end.
Yeah,
Which,
it's mostly
shocked
silent.
people.
I think there's dialogue, but Chaplin's character doesn't really say a lot.
Yeah.
So there is,
And then he...
and I think that it's the main dialogue is reduced to his speech at the end because Chaplin wanted it to be able to be shown in cinemas that didn't have the facility for sound.
Yeah.
So there were speech cards that came up that were in some edits. So
That would
you could
explain
get the
why
full
he
impact of the
actually...
speech.
That would explain why he speaks quite slowly.
Yeah. And he pretty much got blacklisted for that film. So yeah, it's a worthwhile film
Really?
to watch. Yeah. I mean, that's why he came back to the England.
I didn't know that.
I mean, he then went on to marry a 16-year-old girl when he was in his 60s and father many, many children. He died in my lifetime.
Wow.
And I think
I didn't know that
1978.
I didn't know that that film essentially ruined his career.
Oh yeah, there were a lot of people that thought, you know, especially it was about 1935, 36.
Yeah.
So Hitler was just coming to power. There were a lot of people that thought that, you know, literally looked at Germany like, oh, that's a country that's pulled itself up by its bootstraps.
Yeah.
It's like when people reference Sparta as a place where, you know, they'd have liked to have lived. Especially
No.
homophobic white racist people.
Yeah.
You know, just think, well, if you wanted to live in an era of slavery where, you know, it was the duty of every Spartan soldier to A, be homosexual for a start,
Yeah.
and B, they had slaves, they referred to as helots. They had various grades of slaves, but during training, the final phase of Spartan training was that he was supposed to go into the countryside and kill a random person that was a helot, rather than a
Wow.
voting Spartan, and get away with it.
Holy crap! I had no idea.
I mean, getting away with it meant that you didn't get fined for destruction of property.
Yeah.
But if you got caught, you'd be punished for having gotten caught rather than for having
Wow.
done something terrible. So it's a pretty mean sort of an environment. But then that's the ancient world. They did some fairly crazy shit to each other.
Yeah. So it was. Did you see the thing about? I know we're just talking now, and we're still recording.
Yeah.
Did you see the thing about Ian Miles Chong getting owned by a historian?
As far as what goes, no, I didn't see.
So so the BBC put out a short video about life in Roman England.
Yeah.
And one of the pictures, it sounds like a short cartoon, and one of the bits of it's got a bit of about one of the British governors who was actually an African.
Yeah.
He wasn't white; he was a person of color because he was from Africa.
Yeah.
But had rose up the Roman ranks, become a Roman citizen, and ended up being governor of Britain.
Oh, nice.
And Ian Miles Chong, who's a proper right-wing nut, said, "Oh, look at this! This is the BBC trying to rewrite history," and because obviously he thinks that the only people who were Roman citizens were Europeans, white Europeans.
No.
And this history teacher, the history professor, I should say, just schooled him in like a 30 tweet long chain, just explaining to him how that no, you're wrong. There were loads of people of color in the Roman Empire who were Roman citizens.
Oh, you know,
the idea of having African people as slaves didn't occur until we started getting white empires after the Roman Empire.
Oh, that's total crap. I mean, we were trading with black people since the Bronze Age.
Exactly.
Black people have never been an unusual thing in this island.
Yeah,
it's never been weird. You know, we've never been surprised at black people. And and the thing about the Romans is they wrote shit down.
They really did.
They carved it into stone and said, "Oh yeah." You know, but they didn't really have an issue with people of colour.
No.
How could they if they had a black governor of Britain?
Yeah.
You know, they were just like, you know, it's all ours. They were highly capitalistic. And their conquest and their lust for slavery eventually destroyed their own empire.
Yeah.
Slavery's bad, okay? And slavery's bad from a capitalism point of view. Because eventually, in order to maintain growth, you shift more and more work onto people that are indentured or enslaved.
Yeah.
That's why America has manufacturing, but it's mostly done by prisoners. So you've actually got a slave class, though not nominally defined by their colour. But given that the population of prisons is, considering the minority of African Americans in America, there's a disproportionately large number of African Americans and Latino people in prison.
Yeah.
You know, so they're doing Dell's manufacturing work. There was a time that if you phoned up for a United Airlines flight, your chances of speaking to a prisoner were better than like 8 out of 10.
Really?
Yeah. They handled all the reservation. They were running call centres in prisons.
I had no idea.
And now they do a lot of manufacturing in prison. So you and pay them stupidly low wages. I think it's like $1 a day.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Why? You don't need to, do they?
Yeah.
Fucking jerks.
So, you know, slavery still exists in America. It's just not, you know, the popularist white slave trade, the white sex slave trade. It's people in prison are being used as slave labour. You know, a vast majority of them in for crimes that don't necessarily rate prison for white people.
No.
Like that rapist kid that's not really going to prison.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Like the 15-year-old kid that drove a car and killed 4 people while drunk.
Yeah.
But because they were wealthy, it was sort of seen as more of a shame that a wealthy person's life would be destroyed by prison.
Rather than a black person's life.
Yeah. So that's basically, this is some sort of third wave civil rights.
Yeah.
I just like third wave feminism. Anyway, let's wrap this up.
Yeah.
It's been fun. I'm going to stop recording now. There'll be some outro music, and we'll be back soon. So we're probably nearer 2 hours again. So we failed.
Yep. Oh, damn it.
Need a more tightly constructed running order, I think, for next time.
We really do.
Or maybe an egg timer. The discussion to 30 minutes, and when that goes off, it's right. Okay, discuss it among yourselves. I'll add this on to the end. So I've been V, and
I've been Graafen.
Yeah, and we'll be back next time.
Take care.
Take care.